Hello and welcome. Before I get this video going, I need your feedback on how my next video is going to look. You see, I wanted to do an examination of The Last Jedi, and I've written up two different ways that I could actually have this play out. In the first way, I do a scene-by-scene analysis of it, and I talk about the tonal issues of it, and I talk about pacing, I talk about some other stuff along with it. Or I could just do videos where each one focuses on either the tone, the pacing, or those other things I talked about. Now, I'm sorry if you don't want a Last Jedi video. That's what's coming next. I've already written it. It's just a question of which format do you think would be most fun. So comment below with which one you want. If you want a scene-by-scene, I talk about the issues as it comes up naturally in the course of the movie, or if you'd like dedicated videos for each subject. With that out of the way, on to today's video. Now, if you recall, I promised that I was going to do a quick filler video every couple days until I got the video I'm working on done. And you might think that I was lying because here we are 7 days later and I haven't put up another video yet. Well, I'm going to show you that I absolutely have not lied at all in today's video, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how 1 actually does equal 2. So when I said every couple days, that actually could very easily mean every 6 to 7. If you don't believe me, I'm going to prove it on this wonderful La Quinta Inn scratch piece of paper. Because as you can see, I am not where I normally am. I am out and about in the greater US states for work. So I'll tell you about that while we're doing this. First off, what we're going to do, we're going to prove that 1 equals 2. And I'm going to start off with two numbers, and I'm just going to call them A equals B. Because when it comes to math, it's more fun to use letters instead of numbers. So there we go. Those are some sort of number. They equal each other. Presumably this could be 5 and 5, 10 and 10. It doesn't matter. The point is A is equal to B. So as part of my job, I often go out just all over the US to program industrial equipment. Now I'm going to multiply both sides by A. Try to keep track of these two different stories as we're doing this. So both sides get equal multiplied by A. So A times A equals B times A. So like that. And I'm going to simplify this to A squared equals A times B. And as I go to these different places, the format that it usually takes is, before I ever go anywhere, I have just hour-long meetings with people in which I tell them exactly what they need to do in order for things to go smoothly when I get there. That's my usual first step. Now, back on this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another A squared to both sides. Okay, so we've seen that A squared equals AB, so now I'm going to add another A squared to both sides. So A squared plus A squared equals A times B plus A squared. There we go. You can see that. So obviously, when I finally get there and I have my program in hand, and I'm expecting all of the stuff I've told them beforehand to have actually been done. Let's see. So now what we're going to do is we have a 2A squared on one side, and we have A times B plus A squared on the other side, like that. So now I'm going to, I want to be able to factor this out into things that make sense, and so I can solve it down. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to subtract a AB off both sides. So now I'm going to have 2A squared minus 2AB is equal to A squared plus AB minus 2AB. So there you can see. So obviously I get there, and almost every time without fail, nothing that I've been said needs to happen has actually happened. So I usually spend several days going through and telling people how to do their job. Now that's not to be rude to them, that's just kind of a matter of fact that I'm not an electrician. I'm a programmer who interfaces with real world machinery. So I do deal with some electrical components, but I'm not a master electrician. I'm not a journeyman electrician. But typically I have to go out and I have to show these master electricians how to read a wire diagram chart and connect the equipment that I need connected in the manner that I need it connected in. So as you can see, we can actually factor out kind of a, first I gotta simplify this, excuse me. So now I'm on the left-hand side, I'm gonna have 2a squared minus 2ab is equal to a squared plus ab minus 2ab, so that's just gonna be a squared minus ab. There we are. You see, 2a squared minus 2ab is equal to a squared minus ab. I'm getting a bad light off of something in here. I don't understand. Whenever I go to hotel rooms, they always have like 50 lights set up around the room, but they never have just one centralized light. So you're always in this weird spot where you either have really weird specific lighting or you have no lighting at all. I don't understand it. Anyway, let's go ahead and simplify this down real quick. So now we have 2a squared minus 2ab. I wrote that. So to tell you what, I'm gonna take this piece of paper and I'm gonna write that top line at the top. Sorry about that. So anyway, I tell these electricians exactly how to do all their stuff, but I've learned over the course of my professional career, and I want to impart this on to anyone who is, it's good life advice no matter what, but especially if you're a programmer like me, is 2 rules for no matter where you go. The first rule is never let anyone know that you are the smartest person in the room. And I know that kind of sounds conceited perhaps, maybe sounds like I'm a little bit full of myself. However, if you are a good programmer, and you should certainly, if that is your career to program things, you should make it your goal to be the absolute best programmer that is out there. And if programming isn't your thing, then it should just be your goal that no matter what field you're in, you should be striving to be the absolute best in that field. And if you don't like your field, let me highly encourage you to get into a different field that you do like, and then pursue to be the best in that one. So what we're going to do now is, you can see I got a 2a squared minus 2ab is equal to a squared minus ab. So I can actually factor a 2 out of my I'm dyslexic. What am I doing here? My right-hand side. So I'm going to have 2 times a squared minus ab is equal to an a squared minus ab, like that. And we can actually simplify this further. That's an implicit 1 time, so I'm going to go and write that out, kind of visualize this. So yeah, you should be striving to be the absolute best in your field. And once you get toward that point, you're going to notice more and more that you are the smartest person in the room for your field. No one can be the smartest person in the room for everything, but you at least start to become the smartest person in the room for your field. Or at least one of the smartest if you're in a room with a lot of smart people. And you never want to act like you're the smartest. And there's a very good reason for that. I'll tell you this fun story here in just a second. But my second rule is never assume you're the smartest person in the room, or in fact, assume that you are not the smartest. So if you are the smartest, don't let other people know. And no matter what, assume that there's someone in the room who is smarter than you. So here we go. There's my little formula. 2a squared minus, or 2 times a squared minus ab is equal to 1 times a squared minus ab. So what we're actually going to do is we're going to cancel out our a squared minus ab's. So, boop, boop, and won't you look at that? But I have just proven beyond a shadow of a doubt. I'll get these up side by side here. That, there we go. That 2 equals 1. I'm just going to hold this up here. Now, obviously, if you look through this, you can see that there's no explicit thing that I broke. There's no mathematical rule. I've used everything very basically. You add to one side, you add to the other side. You subtract from one side, you subtract from the other side. Everything's equal together. But very clearly, I have a situation where I've made 2 equal 1, and that can't be right. So this is a riddle that I'm going to leave for y'all to enjoy. Okay, so setting the math problem aside, let me finish my story here. So I have a reason for these 2 rules. The first time was toward kind of the middling of my career, where I was really just starting to get a grasp on what I know and what I don't know. I had a meeting where it ended up being me with a bunch of very old men, and we are setting up a design standard that the entire company was going to be following. So I sat there, and I was actually representing another old guy who had been pulled to the field, and so he wasn't going to be able to present at the meeting, but I knew all the code, so I was sent to do it. So I present this code, and I show how we can use it across every platform, every controller, every graphical interface, and it will look the same. It will program the same. It will look the same. And I was trying to present the case that this is the standard we should set up on. And then I found out about half a second later that the decision had already been made and that this was a boilerplate meeting, that it was just someone was going to rubber stamp the decision they'd already made, and there was no point in me being there. I had wasted time preparing for it. I had wasted time presenting, just complete waste of time all over the place. And so I didn't realize this yet, but they said, well, we're going to go with this one standard over here, and it works for this controller only with this top end. And I said, well, wait a minute. If your goal is to standardize, why are we standardizing on something that can't be put across the board? And I had one of the old guys in there who, he's a very smart man, but he's not a smart programmer. I don't mean to be rude, and I certainly don't mean to be condescending or haughty or arrogant on my part. But all his programming knowledge was for what we call ladder logic way back in the day. It's all relays and stuff. And he took his knowledge of an electrician and he applied that to a programming environment. And there's a lot of people out there who have done that. Nothing wrong with it. But when we're talking about high-level programming, he was out of his depth. And he assumed that he was the smartest person in the room when, unfortunately, he wasn't on this subject. I'm not saying I was, but he wasn't. And he actually was extremely rude and condescending and was telling me that, well, once I get older, I'll really understand what this is. And I'm older, and I'd still say he's completely wrong on what he did. But, as young Matthew, I was very annoyed by this. But as older Matthew, I actually recognized that there are a lot of people in the room who were much more intelligent than he was. People that I was very fortunate to be mentored by. And as he made this statement, I saw how awkward so many of those people were. And I came to realize afterwards, a couple of them took me to the side independent of each other, and they explained to me that that they understood beforehand that this was a waste of time, that this guy just wanted to rubber stamp something. So he had a couple people who would support him in this, and then they'd get this pushed through. And so they understood that there's no point in speaking out because it had already been decided, and they're just going with the flow because there's no point fighting it in this situation. And so they'd explained to me that, and but they'd also made it clear that this was a superior way of doing it, the way that I had presented, which understand that it was code I knew, but it wasn't my code. Someone smarter than me, like I said, I was only in the middle of my career. Someone smarter than me had done this. So that guy had made a complete fool of himself in front of his peers because a young man, I say I'm toward the middle of my career. It might be better to say that I was at the end part of my earliest part of my career. And the fact that I was clearly showing everyone in this room that I knew more about programming than he did and more about just our entire business than he did made him look like a complete fool. So that was something from that moment on, I realized that anytime I go into any situation, I'm not going to assume that I'm the smartest person in the room. Present your ideas, be confident, but don't be arrogant. Always leave room for yourself to be absolutely, completely, and horribly wrong, and to be able to be wrong with graciousness and with dignity. Because fast forward to yesterday, I'm on the job site, and obviously, as I said, it followed my usual pattern where I said I need this, this, and this, and nothing was ready. So I've spent the day going through wiring diagrams to figure out stuff that other people should have already done before me. Which, that's no problem. That's what people hire me for. I love the work. But So I'm sitting there with a master electrician, and we're talking about what we need to do to get this stuff working. And I'm used to dealing with people who know nothing about what I do. And all of a sudden I realized that I was explaining like, oh yeah, you gotta tie the neutral of this power supply to the neutral of that power supply, or else things won't work, you won't be getting your signals. And I stopped. I looked at him and I said, I am so sorry, sir. You are a master electrician. I do not need to be explaining any of this to you. I apologize. I'm used to talking to people who don't know this. And you know what? He had been getting annoyed with me right before that moment. Looking back, I realized that his body stance, his body language was becoming increasingly annoyed with me. And at that moment, everything changed. Because I had the humility to remember that I was not the smartest person in the room, or to assume I wasn't the smartest person in the room, his attitude changed. And he started to laugh with me. We started to have fun. We talked back and forth. It was a good time. He's a great person. I look forward to working with him for the rest of this job. But because I had the ability to stop, apologize, and just move forward, we had a great relationship because he was a master electrician. He knew all this stuff, and I was treating him as if I was the smartest person. And when I explained what I was doing, it was just able to reframe our entire working relationship. And so those are the reasons I had those two roles. Never letting anyone know, because yeah, for a lot of the other things, I definitely knew a lot more than him, and I was having to walk him through things. But it's important not to be arrogant about it, and it's important to recognize that there's someone else out there who's smarter than you, and it's probably the person you're just talking down to. And so I hope you enjoyed this quick filler. I hope you enjoyed that quick story. Guys, remember, I hope you're enjoying them because I love making these videos. Please be sure to comment down below which one of the two formats you'd like for that Last Jedi movie. And until the next time, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May he cause his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord lift up your countenance and give you peace. Amen.